All right. So the .au domain name update, I mentioned this to you yesterday, Kelsey. I attended a webinar that went for an hour on the domain name, which seems like a bit excessive considering that we're still 6 months away from the release of that domain name. For those of you who didn't watch the previous episode, I think it was 2 episodes ago that we spoke about .au, which they're calling .au direct. Um, there were some interesting things that came out of it, but the main thing is that one, it's going to be launched on the 24th of March next year. So we're looking
Mhm.
at just under 6 months, if my maths is correct. And interestingly, this is something that I didn't realize, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they actually monitor this, but anyone, I mean, technically, I think it's anyone who resides in Australia can register a .au domain, which is different to the .com.au, .org.au, etc., because those domains actually have eligibility criteria. That means that every time you register a .com.au, for example, you need to give in an ABN, and they need to check that and confirm that you have an ABN in Australia, and then they'll give you your .com.au domain. Whereas .org.au requires you to actually be a ACNC registered not for profit, or there's a few things around it, but you've essentially got to be a legitimate business. And I didn't realize that .au Direct's gonna be so much more open.
Mhm.
Have you ever tried to record a domain name yourself and had issues?
No, not myself. But I mean, I guess this will make it a lot easier if somebody like me did want to go and register a domain because I don't have to go through all the loopholes of .com.au, not loopholes, jump through hoops. That's the one I'm looking for.
Yeah, the
To
kind
go
of hoops,
through
yeah.
to get .com.au. So might open up a lot for smaller businesses, individuals, that kind of thing.
Exactly. I think the goal there is that if you're a startup, if you're they spoke a lot about people who sell on platforms like Facebook Marketplace, who want to register a domain or have their own website and take that jump over, but haven't been able to because they don't want to go through the expenses of, say, getting an ABN, because you don't necessarily need an ABN to trade in Australia. So this opens up the potential for them to create websites. And they've also spoken about companies who want to set up sort of temporary landing pages or do temporary marketing campaigns could use a .au. Initial signals suggest that .au Direct is going to cost about $9 a year, so quite affordable compared
Really cheap.
to, yeah, really is quite cheap. And I think that is potentially because they just need to verify probably a residential address, and that's it, versus needing to do like an ABN lookup and confirm the details there. So opens up a few different possibilities moving forward, and I think I'm still very excited for it. There's still the stuff around, priority periods. So if you've got a .com.au or a .net.au or .org.au, you can still you get that preferential treatment for the first 6 months. So there's nothing changing there. Another interesting thing I found actually was that the AUDA, who manages the .au domains in Australia, mentioned that they saw, from memory, it was about a 5% increase in domain names being registered during the COVID sort of pandemic period, um, which, yeah, is being studied by economists, because that's obviously an expense that businesses have borne um, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a period where some businesses have struggled. So they've
Mhm.
sort of brought that up as an interesting point, because you would assume that a majority of these businesses, I would assume, actually registered a domain and probably paid a third party to build a website for them. So Yeah, I think I found that really interesting. But
Yeah, it's not super surprising though, because obviously with the pandemic, all of a sudden you've got all these lockdowns, people can't come into shops, and I imagine a lot of those businesses did rely on that foot traffic, and they had to do something. They had to put cost into something to keep the business going, and if that was a website and a domain, that makes
yeah,
a lot of sense.
it
And in the big scheme of things, not that expensive, I think.
definitely, and it was probably one of the few uh, places where they could actually spend money as an investment into the business, because with everything shut down, what else would you be spending your money on? Um,
Exactly.
Another interesting thing that they pointed out was that there are about 3.5 million, I think it was actually 3.3 or 3.4 million domain names registered in the .au sort of space. So that's a pretty decent number. That's, above 10% of the population if we were to attribute a domain name per individual. And
Mhm.
that's forgetting, the .coms and the .cos of this world, where people have registered or trade under a domain name extension that isn't in Australia. So I thought that was quite a good webinar. They're going to keep releasing more information moving forward, and for our customers at Future Theory, we'll keep you in the loop as well as more news comes through on that, and we'll be helping customers register their domain names as well. We've got 6 months, from the 24th of March, so there's no mad rush there, but we'll be providing more information as more information comes afoot.